Good morning, y'all. Um, there's been a change of plans with the overview of Genesis. Um, I could do one, but I just want to point out some facts that the timeline of Genesis. Okay, from the beginning of time to the end of Genesis, where Joseph dies. Okay, that period of time is longer than from the end of Genesis until now. Okay, I just want to point that out. Because you got to remember, those guys were living almost 1,000 years before the flood and everything. So I've decided, and I started preparing for this, and I said, there's just no way to give this thing the attention that it deserves in some kind of summary. And I also listened to a couple breakdowns about Genesis. Now I can sit here and just read off bullet heads about what happened, but it's not going to do any service to the story. So I've decided not to do an overview on Genesis. Not because I can't do one, it's just going to be a bunch of stuff, me just rattling off stuff, and that's not doing anything. Every one of these bullet heads requires a story behind it. So I'm not going to do the Genesis a disservice by trying to break it down in a summary. Okay. And that's pretty much it, because I've listened to a couple ones, and it just turned into like this little cartoon thing and this comical thing, But let me just give you a rough outline of Genesis. Okay, a rough outline, and it goes into two parts in Genesis: the primeval history, which is Genesis 1 through 11, and the patriarchal history going from 12 to 50 in chapters. And I'm not even going to try to break into that, because this is not meant to be read like that. And it won't be doing anything for y'all. It won't be doing anything for anybody for me trying to do that. This Bible is meant to be read word for word, and I'm not going to attempt it after. I know I said I was. I lied. It would be a miss if I tried to do that. And to walk away like we did something. We wouldn't be doing anything by doing that. So I decided that it's going to do the Bible it's going to do y'all a disservice. It's going to do the channel a disservice if I do that. It's going to do everybody a disservice if I try to break down the book of Genesis in a manner, because you can't just cram. That's like me trying to cram world history ever since that's like me trying to cram world history from dang now back to Jesus. It's just no way you can do that in any type of fashion. I mean, that's going to mean anything. That's going to benefit you. It's going to be a laughable thing. It's not going to be important. So I'm declining on doing the overview on Genesis in a manner that is any detailed. Okay? But what we do have, okay? What we do have is where it starts with Adam. Okay? It starts with Adam. He has 3 sons: Cain, Abel, and Seth. Okay, from Seth has 7 lines. There's 7 lines: Enosh, Kenan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and then Noah. So you got from Seth to Noah. Okay? And from Noah, he had 3 sons. And everybody else was wiped out at that point. Okay, from the flood. But from his 3 sons, the storyline follows Shem. Okay, this is where the story is following. So the Bible is zooming in on, and yes, there was other sons prior to that. I guess I am doing a breakdown, but I'm not going into any detail about what's actually in the chapter. I'm just giving you a rough outline, okay, where the story is following. All right. So you got Adam, had 3 sons. Of course, Cain killed Abel. All right. Seth had 7 generations. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 generations between Seth and Noah. Okay. Boom. Noah has 3 sons. Okay. And then it jumps again 7 generations to Abraham. And it is not uncommon to see that 7, 7. That's an image that happens in the Bible sometimes. When you see a similar gap, it's a similar gap. It's a pairing. So that's also another fingerprint of God when you see that type of stuff. You see 7 generations here, 7 generations there, and it's a pair. Boom, boom. You see that in Revelations 2 with 7 and 7. Or 14. You see stuff like this. That's a fingerprint of God, okay? So from Shem, you got Apraxad, Shelah, Eber, Peleg, Ru, Serug, Nahor, Terah. Okay? Now Terah had 3 sons. Okay, one of those was Abraham. Now mind you, all of these other sons from Shem also had families too, and they're in the world too. But the story is following Abraham, and of course we'll have interactions from the other people in the world from their point of view. Okay, and of course we're zooming in on this line, but we're zooming in on the line where Terah has Abraham. Okay, Abraham, he's the father of the faith, stuff like that. But he has Ishmael and Isaac, okay? And from Isaac, but the important point to note about Genesis is that he's been promising to come through one man and make and do his complete work through the Christ. That's the story that this is. God has been promising the Lord since day one. So God has been promising the Lord. God's ultimate plan was Jesus, okay? And it's been going on since before the Bible even started, but that's what this story means. It's about Jesus. There's a reason he's homing in on these people. And this story is coming from their perspective. It's all about the Lord coming in. That's the main point to take away. Okay, so it's following, because keep in mind, there's a lot of people in the world from the descendants of Seth and Cain, okay? But it didn't follow that story. It followed Seth's story. I don't know why I can't talk. It followed the story of Seth, okay? And it went down 7 generations, which of course they were living like almost 1,000 years, okay? And then Noah, okay? And from Noah came Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And then the story follows through Shem, okay? And all along, it's been God's purpose to go through these people. And he knew he was going to go through these people. Okay, he knew that this is where the Christ was going to come from. But this is what it's all about. It's all about the Christ. Okay? So, and from Abraham came Ishmael and Isaac. Okay? And of course, from Isaac, Esau and Jacob, That's where they came, and that's where Genesis ends with Joseph, the 12 sons of Jacob, and that's where the Jews came from. And everybody else in the world also after the flood came from Noah's sons. So that's important to know. This is the Genesis history of the world. But what can we take away from Genesis? Without getting into all the details and trying to do all that, we can take away from Genesis that we have proof now of what God is doing. Not to mention it's an actual world proof of the world. End of story. This is an actual world proof of what actually happened and where the Christ came from, that God has been doing this over the centuries. God has been planning the Christ over the centuries, and he's not done. He's not done with his planning, okay? And we can see that. That's what this is for, to show us that God is in motion. God is doing stuff. That's what Genesis is all about, and that's what the Bible is all about, and that's what your life is all about. Fulfilling this stuff. Fulfilling this stuff. Okay? Because it's not that God isn't working in these other stuff that aren't mentioned. It's just showing. You should see that when God is working and He's publishing this stuff, He's mentioning these names and it's been documented. That should be an eye opener to you to say, "Oh wow, well, God is actually working." Yeah, we're here, but God is in charge. Okay, and God has had a plan and it can't be messed up. Or you'd be in a bad situation to try to go against that. Okay? And also in Genesis we get an insight into God's character, what he expects and what he's like. That's what we get in here in Genesis. We know about sin. We know about faith. We know about sacrifice. We know about wickedness. We know about this stuff in Genesis because God is speaking. We know about our enemy, Satan. We know about what we're supposed to be. We know about God and his righteousness and his goodness. We know about stuff. All this comes in Genesis. Okay. But yeah, in Genesis it starts out of nothing. It goes from eternity. All this stuff comes into play about space is created, time is created. Don't quote me. Matter is created, man is created. And of course, I'm sure there's other stuff going on in other realms, in heavenly places and all that. But this is where we come into play, and this is where the world we live in comes into existence, and it's the whole story. The whole story. Any other questions you're going to be asking, okay, how did God do that? Okay. Those are dumb questions because you can't know. Don't ask questions that can't be answered. How did God make the world out of nothing? Okay. Same way you go about and do your stuff. You just do it, don't you? When you walking around, going from here to there, how are you doing that? What do you say? I just do it. That's what God does. He just does it. It's like Nike. Okay, now, yeah, so that's what happened, man. But I just want to note, again, that the time from beginning of Genesis, where Adam was created, or the world was created, and there was a timeline coming in there, people's ages were being documented. People knew how old they were. From that time until the end of Genesis. That time is longer than the time from the end of Genesis until now. That's an important point to note. So, that's where we're at with that. Genesis is over. We did that. So instead of trying to go through every chapter, not through all the bullet heads and just rattling off stuff, I'm not going to do that because those points need to be broken down in themselves. Even I can't just rattle off stuff about names and not give you. I couldn't expect y'all to retain that, or I wouldn't attempt it. I have to know when that's too much to take on, and because each story has its stuff. Okay. So I think what I'll do anyway is just slide through the headlines on this reluctantly. I mean, I really just want to break right into Exodus. I think that's what I'm going to do, because there's just no way to try to just throw. I'm not just going to throw stuff out there and say, "Hey, this is what happened." Blah, blah. No, that isn't doing anything for anybody. But I am going to tell you that we have insight. And somebody said that what we should take away from this is that the grand and the most enlightened thing that you can take from Genesis is this: that Joseph said that y'all meant evil for good. I mean, y'all intended evil for me, but God made that for good. And that is a way to look at God in the world, that He's working. You'd be really off key if you didn't see that. That's the ultimate plan, that God has a bigger plan than whatever the individuals have going on, or their group, or whatever they're doing. God is ultimately working and using them for His bigger picture. That's the ultimate takeaway. And once you see that and understand that, that's where you need to be with Genesis. Okay, we know God is real. Here's the real genealogies. Here we are today. The flood happened. The Exodus happened. Now there's some dispute on the Exodus about the date of the Exodus. That's really the only dispute about the timeline. It's about 200-year difference. Okay, so now there's different arguments for a date on the Exodus. So the Exodus, when you talk about now, we're not even there yet on the Exodus, but that's where the timeline, there's a couple of timeline differences on that. And there's some arguments within historians about the date of the Exodus. It's not whether it happened or not. It's not whether it happened or not, it's when it happened. Okay? There's Exodus. There's an Exodus controversy about when that happened. Other than that, everything's on point, so. But that's the main point. We need to know that there's a common controversy within about the dates of the Exodus within Bible scholars. Some say it happened 1,500 years. I just had it right here. Okay. Some people say that it happened 1,260 years before Christ. And others say it happened 1446 before Christ. Okay. So like I said, it's important to note again that the Genesis story between the Exodus, between Joseph dying in the beginning of time is longer period of time than it is from the end, that time until now. So to try to go through that, it would be doing a disservice to everyone by doing that. We're not going to try to do that, but we are going to talk about what we can take away from Genesis. And the main point, again, I said, and we're going to break right into Exodus in a second. The main point to take away from that is the characters and understanding that we're homing in on a line, because it's about Jesus, and it's about this whole Bible points to Jesus. It's always been pointing to Jesus. Okay? And everything is pivotal, resting on him. Everything is in subjection to him. Okay, that's the way it is now. Jesus is God and all it. Yeah. So we started with Adam. We're at Joseph now. He just died. Okay. And from the flood, everybody died before that, and after that, it was Noah's 3 sons. Okay, and it's from Shem that we have the line of Joseph and Jacob and Esau. And also, don't forget, the Islamic religion came from Abraham also. He is a patriarch in their religion. He's their pillar also. Don't quote me. But, yeah. So let me see if I can find that line again and talk about that again. Because I don't want to just be babbling here. That's why I didn't want to do that breakdown. All right, here we are. We have the genealogies of Genesis. There's 7. There's 2 gaps. One before Noah, one after Noah. Okay, Adam was first. His son was Seth. Okay. From Seth, it goes down to Noah. And then his son was Shem. He had 3 sons also. His son was Shem, and from there there's 7. There's a gap, a exact number of gap, a similar gap, 7 and 7, down to Terah, and Terah was the father of Abraham. Abraham had 2 sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Okay. Isaac had 2 sons. I mean, sure, Ishmael had sons too. The world is populated because we got all these people after. You got Ham's children, Japheth. Noah had 3 sons, but we're only following Shem. We're only following Shem for the most part. Okay, and Abraham had 2 sons, and Terah had 2 other sons too. So Terah had 3 sons, but Abraham was one of them, Nahor and Haran. Okay, now there's a lot of people in the world. Coming from Shem, Ham, and Japheth. There's 7 generations after Shem. Okay, and I'm sure Ham has a lot. Japheth has a lot. You got to imagine all these people that are in the world now. And now Abraham has 2 brothers. Okay, so they have children too. And there's just a lot of stuff going on. A lot of people in the world now. But everybody was wiped out before Noah. Don't forget that. I mean, when the flood came, the only people left was Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and that's literally what that means. Now, we're not going to get into all the parallels and all that, all the stuff that's going on there. We're not getting into all that, okay? But, Isaac had 2 sons, Jacob and Esau. There's a lot going on there. We're not talking about that either. But we do have an outline of what's going on, okay? We have an outline. And here we are with Joseph. Jacob dies. He blesses the kids. He blesses the 12 tribes. Joseph dies. And that's where Genesis ends. He tells them, hey, y'all need to take my bones out when y'all go to leave Egypt. So, there you have it. There's your outline of Genesis. But to try to get into all the details is not going to do anything for y'all. So I realize that. I'm not just going to sit here and rattle off bullet heads and rattle off stuff and not give it the attention it deserves. Because it doesn't. It's not supposed to be like that. I will give you an overview as far as the genealogy. So I think that's going to be it on the overview. So Joseph dies. We're going to break right into Exodus right now. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. And I'm going to say this one more time, that the period of time from Adam, from Genesis, to where Joseph dies, is a longer period of time than from that time until now. Yeah, really, that's really what happened. So, and what we can take away from Genesis is realizing the character of God. We realize character of God. We realize this is a real genealogy back to Adam. God has spoken here, and this is really. And now, in hindsight, we have the whole story. I mean, not the whole story. We're a part of the story, but we had, in hindsight, with the Christ already coming, we have a very good 2020 hindsight on this to see what all this actually means and where it's going. And we can look back and appreciate all the stuff God has been doing and saying. Now that we have the Christ, we can really see the full character of God. Well, not the full character, but we can see a lot. And get more faith built, looking back, understanding his stuff. Because there's a lot of parallels and stuff like that. Layers of meaning. So that, and the main thing to take away, like I said again, Joseph said, was that what y'all meant for me, the main thing to learn about God in Genesis. And this echoes down through the Christ. This echoes into today's world. This has always been the case. That Joseph said, what y'all did, they went to apologize to him, or they were scared. They went to him and said, hey, we're sorry. He said, no, what y'all tried to do evil on me, God had planned for good. And that's the big revelation. If you don't take nothing else away from Genesis, that's what you should be taking away. Understand God is in control. Don't get hung up on your daily lives. Don't get hung up on your stuff. God is real. God is working. You have a job to do. Okay? You have a job to do and a God to please and a character to fulfill. You have a prophecy to fulfill. You're supposed to be in the Lamb's Book of Life. You're supposed to be, this is where you're supposed to be. Okay? You're supposed to be as close to God's goal for you as possible. You should be fulfilling that goal and excelling in that area. Because you never know what God's going to do. Okay? This is your goal, but this is our blueprint. This is our proof that God has provided. Once you do this, you fulfilled your goal. You have fulfilled your goal by understanding what Joseph said right there. And that's as big as it gets. That's as big as it gets when it comes to what Joseph said about his brothers. That's as big as humanity gets. End of story. When you realize that God is supernaturally working behind the scenes over great spans of time from the foundation of the world, when you see that and realize, yeah, it's personally for you, but it's also on a grand scale. And that he's working in ways you can never pin that down and figure it out. You'd never see the whole picture. When you realize that, that's as big as it gets for humanity. There's no other truth you're going to get to that's going to surpass that. End of story. And you need to understand the vastness. I got a speech impediment, okay? The vastness. You need to understand how vast God is with his hand and his work. Okay, it's bigger than this world. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than the Christ. Well, I take that back. Nothing is bigger than the Christ. Okay, that, Lord forgive me. Christ is bigger than anything, okay? Because he is God. Okay, but that's his main pinnacle. That's the main point so far, I think. That's the main point. And when we see that and what this book is telling the story of that, I'm not saying there's other stuff that we're not going on to in whatever eternity has for us. But right now, this is as big as it gets. Realizing what Joseph said And that story has been going on since Adam. That God has been using the evil for good. That's the story. That's the Bible nutshell. That's the world nutshell. That's the personal nutshell. Okay, once we realize that, we need to be tipping the scales and doing what we can do. We need to be doing stuff. And, there's a lot going on. Wicked judgments in here, all kind of stuff. God's character, God's making covenants, God's making deals. But there's no negotiating. There's no negotiating with God. There's no escaping Him. Okay. So, what this does, y'all, is in hindsight. This Bible is proof of God. It's foreshadowing the Christ. That's what all this is. It's all leading down to the Christ for that purpose of the Christ. Not only to have the Christ, but also to prove the Christ. God is multifaceted. Yeah, this is producing the Christ, but it's evidence of the Christ so that the Christ can be the full Christ that He's supposed to be. And He is. But that's what this is. It's a proof of the Christ. End of story. And it's more than just book. This is a supernatural thing. It's coming into your life. It's doing stuff. It's the Spirit's in you. You see it. You feel it. You know it. All the stuff is happening. But this is what this has produced. And it's not this. This is all God. Everybody who compiled this, and it's authentic. It's historically backed. It's identified. It's affirmed. Okay, it's confirmed. This is all really happened. And it's all historically backed. Period. You can sit here and say that all day long. Look into what they're saying. Don't just let people say stuff. Look into what they're saying. They have nothing to go on when they say that stuff. They have nothing to go on. Yeah, there's some stuff in the Bible. People lying, people that were wrong in the Bible had said stuff. People have said wrong stuff in the Bible as far as like names, gods. They have said wrong stuff that was off, if I'm not mistaken. They have, but that doesn't take away from the whole story. Okay? Just because somebody in the Bible, speaking in the Bible, had their facts wrong, or a scribe had their facts wrong, that doesn't take away from what's going on in the grand scheme of this thing. Okay, so, yeah. So we're going to go right into Exodus right now. Now, these are the names. This is Exodus. Okay. Verse 1. Now, these are the names of the children of Israel which came into Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Egypt. And I just want to throw out there that not only is God talking about the Christ and following the Christ, He's also telling the whole world story without leaving nothing out. And that's just God's like character. He's telling the story of the Christ. He's giving you personal information. He's giving you His insight. He's giving you instructions. He's telling the future, but He's also leaving nothing out except for the details. Like everybody that's in the world really came from Noah, Ham, and Japheth. He's just not mentioning everybody there. But they're there. The fathers are there. So He's not leaving nothing out except for their names. Their fathers are there. It's just that everybody that came after that isn't listed. But their fathers are listed. So I just want to throw that out there. That God has covered all bases about everybody in the world. Okay. And when you take a step back and say, wow, hold on, God's talking about the Christ. He's giving you supernatural insight. He's giving a complete genealogy all the way back to the first man. I mean, literally everybody. Nothing's left out. He's giving you a timeline. He's giving you a Christ. He's giving you a way out. He's telling you what's going to happen. And at the same time, he's making you wise and giving you wisdom and all that. And at the same time, he's telling you he loves you, he's good for you, all that. So, that's quite, when you really take a step back and realize how that is, it can be big. It is big. But don't think that everything's not accounted for. I just said that from Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, everybody came from them. Literally. So, when you realize all that God is doing here, okay, he's telling about the Christ. All this is so easy for God. And not only that, he's put it in a magazine for you. He's put it in a book for you. It's pretty profound when you really think about it. And not to mention, he's predicting future things, the mark of the beast. He's predicting all kind of stuff in here too. So, for me to preach on Genesis and recap that like I've done somewhat, and what that means for us, it goes out the window, the gravity of what this book does. But I can tell you right now, here's what they're going to say. Oh, well, there's no way this can account for everybody. What about the Native Americans? What about the Eskimos? What about this? What about that? Oh, this isn't right. There's no way that everybody after the flood, that's everybody in the world. There's no way that happened. Let me see. Oh, that can't be true about creation. Evolution disproved that. Guys, I hate to tell you, but y'all could be wrong about everything. This could be right about everything. Period. Everything you're saying could very easily be off. Very easily. Everything you're saying, Native Americans, Eskimos, evolution, anything you want to say, oh, the gene pool, it couldn't work. Oh, Noah's Ark wasn't real. There's no way. Oh, no, they didn't part Red Sea. Oh, Jesus didn't raise from the dead. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Guys, I hate to tell you all that. Y'all could be wrong about everything. You are wrong about everything. But for the sake of argument, I'm going to grant you that you could be right. But for the sake of argument, I'm letting you know you could be wrong. You need to admit that. And you could say, oh, well, no, I'm not. You don't know that. You don't know that. Your side of the story does not have a detailed genealogy down to the Christ that was spoken of from ground one. Ground zero was spoken of ground one, and even the Christ has spoken into eternity. But the Christ has been planned since day one. God has been intimate with us since day one, and he still is. And he's not done. He's never done. What does your story have to offer? Yes, I really just sat here for 30 seconds, letting that sink in. What does your story have to offer? Does it have the fingerprint of God on it? Does it have names and times and places and dates and science and all that, and So we're all standing around and the stars are moving, we're looking out in galaxies, and we're all saying, oh, we're so smart. Oh, how to get here? We don't know. What's keeping us alive? Oh, the sun. Oh. How are we here? Oh, it was just a chance. We're just here. What are black holes? We don't know. What if one comes this way? We don't know. Why aren't we all blown up with nuclear bombs? Why aren't we all dead? Why isn't pollution taking over the world? I don't know. But God isn't real. We don't know why we're here. We can't explain why we're here. We have no earthly clue how this could happen except for a big bang and everything just happened. Okay, how do you know that Big Bang wasn't God's intention? How do you know that God didn't poof? If God can poof a Big Bang into existence, God can poof a man into existence. I'm trying to explain that what we take away from Genesis, y'all, is that it's detailed. Two different religions, Islam, Jewish, both came from Abraham. Abraham has a father named Terah. He goes back to Shem, who came from Noah. Everybody behind Noah died except for his 3 sons. And there was a lot of people in the world. Seth had 6 other children, 6 generations of people, and 6 generations of sons, and they all had their own families and stuff too. Behind Noah, all those people died. This is a real generation from real religions today. We have a real person with a real father. That goes back 7 generations to Shem, and he had 3 brothers, and they had children. That's where the people in the world are coming from. But prior to that, everybody was wiped out with a supernatural thing that can be verified all over. The ancient Chinese letter for flood means 8 people on a boat. And that was Noah, his wife, and his son's wives. There's 4 men and 4 women. 8 people on a boat. That's what flood means in ancient Chinese. Look it up. Why would flood mean 8 people on a boat? Ancient Chinese is way older than Hebrew, if I'm not mistaken. And even ancient Chinese letters, it also speaks about the Garden of Eden. Yeah, when you look up garden or something like that, it's like a man and a woman in a garden or something like that. This is not nothing new that this has been talked about. So I can't talk about Genesis without talking about what this means. That this is the only truth that you can trust. Why is it credible? It's got real generations going down to real people today with real places. And a real God with a real Christ that was really resurrected. And eyewitnesses testified on that. And were put to death on that. They were so convinced that they will not turn away from their faith. Because they knew the Christ. They saw the Christ. Resurrected. Not to mention all the miracles. And they were working miracles also. So why can we trust the Bible? Why can we trust Genesis? We got a real genealogy with real people today. Islam. Jewish people. They still have the Passover. Don't you know what that means? That was the Exodus and all that. All this really happened. This really happened. They still have the Passover feast. This happened in Egypt. We'll get into that later. They all go back to Abraham, Ishmael, and Isaac. Esau. Abraham had 2 sons. But guess what? All of this goes down to the Christ. From the beginning of the first man. Why is this so correct? It's an accurate world history. It's an accurate world history with places and events that can be geologically verified. Artifacts, places. Egypt is a real place. All of this is intertwined with all this. All of these places in Genesis is a real place. So not only is this a spiritual blueprint, not only is this a historical document, accurate, this is the Word of God. But He's given you everything you need. He's giving you your instructions. He's giving you your proof. He's giving you your history. He's giving you your future telling. He's telling you what's going to do. He's telling you what's going to happen if you do this. He's going to tell you all this, but He's also giving you your history lesson. He's giving you your wisdom. He's giving you everything you need, and it's verified. All this stuff is verified, man. Yes, Abraham's father, going back, was Shem. He was off the boat of the flood. There it is. The 12 tribes of Israel came from Isaac. That was a son. Came from Jacob, which is the son of Isaac, which is the son of Abraham, which is the son of Terah. It goes back to Shem with the flood. And that goes back to Seth, who's the son of Adam. And of course you got your Nephilim, you got stuff like that. You got supernatural stuff going on. But don't you guys see that the further away we get from the supernatural, the closer we get to death? Because it's common knowledge to know that, you know, the abstract and the spiritual is higher than the physical. So the more we want to exclude the supernatural and spiritual things, the further away, the lower we get. But the more we move in principle, and the more we think about that kind of stuff and act it out and act in a sense of principle, that's a better state to move away from the material and go up to the spiritual. But guess what? Secular thinking is going to have you as far away from this as they can. You're going to be right there in the dirt. I hate to tell y'all that. That's not the case. But, so Genesis is important to know. And I didn't really get far in Exodus, but so I just want to take away, I saw in one of my studies last night that the main thing to take away from Genesis is that, you know, Joseph realized, and this is really the ultimate wisdom you can get to. Because once you see this, you understand God is real, and then you can adjust your theology, adjust your mindset, so that you can get where you need to get to. And of course, once you make that ascension, you realize it's not really about you, of course, but so there's a big shift. There's a lot of bad places you can be, or wrong places. But this is a process. This is why we're here. Okay? This is why we're doing the channel. Joseph said that y'all intended evil for me, but God had it for good. God made it for good. God intended it for good. Now, don't get into the technicalities on that. But God intended it for good so that I could go save others. And that's the mind blow. That's the secular thing that isn't talked about. Or that's the stuff that isn't talked about. That's the big break. The secular would not acknowledge that. It happened with the Christ. It's been happening since day one. And it will always happen that God is trumping all evil. God is using evil against evil. God is using evil for the good. I'm not saying that's his only motive, but it works fine. It's doing well. Don't fix it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. God has been doing evil for good. Not doing evil. God has been using evil for good since day one. And Joseph saw that. And that's not really what it's about, but when you realize that, when you realize that, that's big. That's a big place to be, and that's where you need to be. Because then you can dive in, and start really whatever it is you're supposed to be doing. But it is a big shift. But once you get to that point, like I said, once you say that and you realize what God has done with the Christ, and you realize that God is working, that's man's peak. You can't get past that as far as knowing God. I mean, I'm not saying you can't get more intimate with him, but that's man's biggest revelation. Knowing that God is bigger than us. Knowing that God is bigger than us, and knowing that you could never know all of God's workings or understand how big that is. But it is working. It is happening. It happened when Joseph realized that he could never have seen that till he got there. And even then he realized he's only seen a piece of it. But he did see it. And that's really all he could say was that, hey, I see part of this, but there's more going on, obviously, and that God is working. And when God saw that, and when Joseph saw that, he said, hey, guys, don't worry about it. God is working. And, into the human mindset, that's mind-blowing. But guess what? That's what's really going on. It's been happening with the Christ. It's been happening since day one, but God has been showing so that we can see it. He'll show you in your personal life. He'll show you in world scale. He'll show you in that. He'll show you exact history. He'll show you exact genealogies. I know I can't speak. He'll show you with genealogies. He'll show you with places. He'll show you personally in your life. Joseph will tell you. The Christ will tell you. Peter will tell you. Paul will tell you. James will tell you. John will tell you. Mark will tell you. Luke will tell you. Walter will tell you. Wesley Huff will tell you. John Lennox will tell you. The Pope will tell you. Islam will tell you about Abraham. Exodus will tell you. I'll tell you tomorrow. So let me show y'all what's going on here. We're on YouTube at Preach Facts, man. Don't tell me the Bible doesn't have proof. Don't tell me the Bible isn't right. Don't tell me it's not in your face. Don't tell me God isn't real. Is that enough proof for you? Now, we're on YouTube at Preach Facts, man. I'm not real happy with today's video. We had to do Bible wrestling. But don't tell me there's not proof. You just don't want to believe it. Y'all have a good day. We're on YouTube at Preach Facts. We're on TikTok at Preach Facts 7. And have a good day.